This IRI training is designed to support teachers, staff, and others who administer or train proctors to administer the IRI to students who are deaf or hard of hearing. This training will outline important information from the IRI Test Administration Manual, General Guidance, as well as provide details from Appendix E. This guidance included in Appendix E was written through a work group of Idaho educators. This training does not replace the need to read the IRI test manual in its entirety on an annual basis. Annual training prior to administration of the IRI is required for anyone who will administer or proctor the assessment. As a component of annual training, all proctors should read and be familiar with the IRI Test Administration Manual, or TAM, found on the Idaho Department of Education website. In addition, proctors should have knowledge of all available accessibility features that are offered within the iStation system. Specific information related to accessibility can be found in the TAM. A recorded IRI accessibility training is also available on the assessment webpage and outlines what features are available as universal tools, designated supports, and accommodations within the iStation system. Accommodations specifically for students who are deaf or hard of hearing can be found in Appendix E and will be covered in this training. In addition to training, all proctors are required to sign an annual confidentiality agreement to be kept on file in the school district for 2 years. Additional information related to test security can be found in the Assessment Integrity Guide available through the Assessment and Accountability Online Resource Center. When an interpreter is required as an accommodation for a student who is deaf or hard of hearing, the required training does apply to the interpreter. Interpreters must be trained by the school or district as IRI proctors and have a signed confidentiality agreement on file prior to administration of IRI. Interpreters should also take time prior to administering the assessment to become familiar with the IRI. One way a school or district can accomplish this is by providing the interpreter who will proctor the assessment with access to the iStation modeling application. The modeling application can be accessed by the student with the interpreter present so that the student and proctor have the opportunity to practice using the system functionality and become familiar with the platform. IRI modeling is located within the student application for iStation. The student will need to log into iStation with a username and password. Once logged in, the student can click on the modeling icon and choose iSIP Early Reading Modeling. This will open a screen that lists each available subtest. Click on the test you would like to see modeled. Modeling allows the interpreter and student to practice using the features of each subtest in addition to hearing how the directions are given for each subtest. Information regarding which subtests are administered to each grade level is in Appendix A of the IRI TAM. For additional information about subtest modeling, you can access the Modeling Tips and Tricks IRI training and Appendix B of the TAM. Deaf or hard of hearing students access auditory information in a variety of ways. Prior to administering the IRI to a student who is deaf or hard of hearing, teachers and proctors must ensure functional access for students who use assistive technology, hearing equipment, or any other supports. This includes, but is not limited to, ensuring access to appropriate hearing equipment that is working properly. If a student does not have the required hearing equipment, the IRI should not be administered until this need has been met. Proctors and interpreters must also ensure the student understands and has practiced using the accessibility features he or she will be accessing during the assessment. Available accessibility features will be outlined in the remaining slides. There are several accessibility features available for students with an identified need, including students who are deaf or hard of hearing. These universal tools and designated supports are designed to be utilized in conjunction with more specific accommodations, such as turning the timer off. It is the responsibility of the IEP or school team to ensure that the correct accommodations, supports, and tools are provided during IRI administration. To learn more about universal tools, designated supports, and accommodations for the IRI, refer to the TAM or access the IRI accessibility training on the SDE website. The first feature we will cover is provided as a universal tool. Universal tools are accessibility features available to any student taking the assessment. Web-based administration of the IRI is available as an embedded universal tool for the IRI. IRI is typically administered through a downloaded application. Web-based administration, available at isip.istation.com, provides an alternative visual experience. Students taking the IRI at isip.istation.com will not see characters present on the screen, and the background visuals will have a more simplified design. Content assessed through the web-based administration is identical to what a student would experience in the downloaded application. Additional information about web-based IRI administration can be found in the IRI TAM in Table 2. Designated supports are available to any student with a documented need, including deaf or hard of hearing students. The decision to provide a designated support to a student should be based on a team recommendation and documented in the student's 504 plan or IEP. The designated supports identified to ensure a standardized and accessible administration of the IRI to students who are deaf or hard of hearing are separate setting, multiple test sessions, and amplification. These supports should be used as needed and are not required for students who are deaf or hard of hearing. Providing a separate setting for administration can reduce background noise and distractions, as well as allow for a one-on-one administration of IRI to a student who is deaf or hard of hearing. Multiple test sessions as a designated support allow the proctor to administer the IRI subtest over the course of multiple days. This can reduce the likelihood of listening fatigue. The proctor should be familiar with the IRI to ensure the student is prompted to stop at the appropriate stopping points between subtests. Another designated support available to students with an identified need, including those who are deaf or hard of hearing, is amplification. This support can improve access for students who are deaf or hard of hearing, particularly during subtests requiring sound discrimination. These supports are outlined in Table 3 of the IRI TAM. The guidance provided in Appendix E of the IRI TAM in Table 11 outlines accommodations that are available only to students who are deaf or hard of hearing. These include, but are not limited to, turning the time off, providing ASL interpretation, and using screen duplication to support interpretation. Each of these accommodations should be included in the student's IEP or 504 plan. Turning the time off for the IRI does not mean unlimited time is provided. Allowing a student additional time to respond will facilitate the use of interpretation and other tools and supports potentially provided to a student who is deaf or hard of hearing. System settings to allow the time to be turned off can be found within an individual student profile under ISIP Accommodations. Selecting Yes will allow the accommodation to be active during the assessment. Teachers and schools should understand that when the time is turned off for IRI, the normed score provided for a student is no longer comparable to peers assessed without this accommodation. Students requiring an interpreter for the administration of IRI must have this accommodation documented in their 504 or IEP. It is important that the interpreter be trained to administer the IRI as outlined in Appendix E. If an interpreter will administer the IRI, the interpreter must be familiar with the test to ensure that the instructions and test items are sufficiently interpreted without reducing the integrity of content. The interpreter should be present during modeling to ensure the testing process is understood. Subtests where interpretation is allowable include listening comprehension, phonemic awareness, alphabetic decoding, letter knowledge, and spelling. Note that interpretation of the reading comprehension and text fluency subtests is limited to the directions only. Screen duplication is an accommodation permissible to allow the proctor or interpreter to see the stimuli to support the provision of ASL. Screen duplication should be used in conjunction with interpretation and may require technology support. Table 12 in the TAM outlines each specific subtest and the allowable accommodations related to the provision of ASL using fingerspelling and visual phonics. Students may also use lip reading when appropriate for a subtest. In order to maintain a standardized administration of the IRI, it is important that the integrity of test items be considered. The following slides will outline each subtest and the important points to consider prior to administration, as well as allowable interpreting. The listening comprehension subtest assesses two skills: sentence completion and picture matching. This subtest will be particularly sensitive to the sustained interpreting ability of the interpreter. Modeling practice for both the student and interpreter is highly recommended prior to administration. For additional information about modeling, in iStation, you can view the Modeling Tips and Tricks training or reference Appendix B in the IRI TAM. In the following video demonstration with an ASL interpreter for the listening comprehension subtest, notice the different questions asked and how each is presented.
Choose the picture that best completes the sentence. Hank was standing outside waiting for his brother to come home when something very strange happened. He looked behind him and saw a very mean dog running towards him. Hank was so frightened, he ran behind a very large green Choose the picture that matches what you hear. Gloria's little brown dog was sick. She took him to the veterinarian.
The phonemic awareness subtest includes the most sound-based items within the IRI. This subtest will require the proctor or interpreter to understand the allowable accommodations by skill type. Review Table 12 in the TAM for specific instructions related to beginning sound, ending sound, rhyming sound, and blending based on the questions given. Points to remember regarding the phonemic awareness subtest include assessing the student in the way instruction is typically delivered, providing signs for pictures, visual phonics or verbal pronunciation of word parts to allow for lip reading, finger spelling or verbal production of syllables and compound words. Note that questions presented in this subtest will alternate between tested skills. The following video demonstrations show finger spelling being provided by an interpreter in addition to visual phonics as appropriate. Notice the specific items when a sign is provided in lieu of or in addition to finger spelling.
Cup. Tired. Screen. Daytime. Cup. Stove. Can. Stove. Coat. Pine cone. Piano. 19. Canoe. Choose the picture for the word you make by blending these words together. Pine, cone. Monster. Dinosaur. Donkey. Doctor. Choose the picture for the word you make by blending these sounds together. Or donkey. Monster. Dinosaur. Donkey. Doctor.
Letter knowledge tests both letter sound and recognition. The video demonstrations for letter knowledge include finger spelling.
Choose the letter that makes the sound G. Ch. Choose the letter U. K.
The alphabetic decoding subtest should be administered primarily through finger spelling if visual phonics is not available. The administration method for this subtest, as with others, should mimic the way in which instruction is provided to the student. Finger spelling of each answer choice is demonstrated in the video that follows.
Ib. Choose slumming, slumming.
The spelling subtest contains both a prompted word and a definition for the word. Fingerspelling should only be used when there is not a sign for the word. If fingerspelling is used, prosody is important to ensure the interpreter is not providing the spelling to the student. The demonstration video will show that the interpreter signed the word, followed by signing the sentence and repeating the word.
Spell the word cage. The monkey was in the cage. Cage.
The IRI vocabulary test will include picture vocabulary and word choices in the form of synonym identification depending upon the student's grade level or ability. When interpreting the vocabulary, thought should be put into each word to ensure, when possible, the sign is not the same as the answer, which would aid the student in choosing. Based on test items, there will be instances when the sign and correct answer are the same. The video demonstration following shows 3 word choices. The first is a sign only, the second a sign and fingerspelled. You will also see both skills tested in the demonstration video.
Choose the picture for the word yawn. Choose the picture for the word flame. Choose flame. Choose the picture that shows the light and soft covering of birds. Choose the word that means the same thing as actual, actual, real, alive, real. Choose the word that means the same thing as actual, alive, real, mythical, symbolic.
Reading comprehension also assesses 2 skills, picture to sentence and sentences without pictures. Testing is based on both enrolled grade level and ability level within the assessment. Interpreters should not provide support on this subtest outside of signing the directions. The time limit when time is turned off is 6 minutes. Remember that an allowable designated support for students with an identified need is testing in multiple sessions as outlined in the IRI TAM. The final subtest in IRI is text fluency. As with the reading comprehension test, interpreters should not provide support on this subtest outside of signing the directions. This test is limited to 6 minutes with the time turned off. The score received on this subtest is not calculated into the overall score a student receives. For questions regarding the administration of IRI to students who are deaf or hard of hearing, you may call or email